Everyone knows that the heroes of Team Avatar went on to do great things after the series ended, including the founding of Republic City and basically bringing peace to the entire 4 nations and creating the 5th nation. But not many people know what happened to Team Avatar after this and how each member of Team Avatar died. So today we're going to break down how every single member of Team Avatar died and what it could mean for Avatar the 7 Havens. So hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and let's get into it. The first member we have to cover is Suki, and she is the strangest place to begin because she is one of the few members who almost certainly lived a long life, and yet disappears from the story entirely pretty soon after the series ends. After the war, she went home to lead the Kyoshi warriors, and in the years that followed, her entire unit was trusted with guarding the new Fire Lord himself, which placed her at the very center of the most heavily protected court in the entire world. As far as we know, she stayed with Sokka loyally the entire way through, and apart from one little thing in the comics where she kind of had a thing for Zuko, and the comics seem to be implying that Suki was going to end up with Zuko instead of Sokka, it seems that she stayed with him the whole time. They married and then grew old together, and we don't actually know if they had any children or any heirs of their own, but there is a leading theory, and this one is pretty simple. That is that Suki lived a full life beside Sokka and passed peacefully before the next era began, and one of the many friends that Katara gently refers to as already gone in The Legend of Korra. However, there's also a bolder theory in the fandom that keeps trying to tie her to the show's other great riddle, and that is the unnamed mother of the next Fire Lord, Izumi. Because of what I mentioned about Zuko and Suki's interactions in the comics and them seemingly getting very close to each other, some people believe that she is actually the mother of Fire Lord Izumi, who took over the throne of the Fire Nation after Zuko abdicated during The Legend of Korra. This, however, is not confirmed, and it's led to so much speculation over the years in the fandom. And that leads us to number 2. Number 2 is Toph, and here is the first big reversal, because Toph does not die in the story at all. Actually, we see her in The Legend of Korra. After the war, she poured her genius into teaching, founding a metalbending academy that trained the very first generation of metalbenders, and then she began to build and lead the metalbending police force of the brand new Republic City that the heroes helped to create while raising 2 daughters of her own. And that's where the big mystery comes in with her. Who were the fathers of these 2 daughters? I have a full video on this theory covering who the fathers may be, but the leading contenders are of course Sokka, Zuko, and a man from the comics who, if you want to find out more about that, check out the video on screen now. In Toph's final years, she walked away from all of it to live alone in a misty swamp, where she was still sharp enough to train the next Avatar, Avatar Korra, and still strong enough to win a fight against her, but it's clear that she had given up on pretty much everything and civilization. The most popular theory that the fandom has come up with for her death and final moments is that after Sokka's death, she retreated to that very same swamp to grieve, and since the timing of her disappearance lines up almost exactly with the loss of her old friend Sokka, the theory imagines that the greatest earthbender who ever lived eventually let it all go at the foot of the ancient tree in the swamp's heart, the same one we see in the original series and then later in Korra, and a tree whose roots connect everything and every living thing in the world, dying the way she lived, becoming one with the earth. That kind of peaceful ending is beautiful, and it's very close to what I could see what the writers would want to do for Toph, so I think this is a beautiful theory, and so far it's the best we have for her in canon. And then we have number 3. Number 3 is Zuko. Zuko followed a similar path, simply outliving the era that everyone assumed he belonged to. He took the throne as Fire Lord right after the war and spent his early reign undoing a century of his own nation's damage, surviving more than one coup against his life, and finally reuniting with his mother who had vanished from him as a boy. In the middle, while Zuko was looking for his mother, he actually appointed Iroh as the interim Fire Lord while he was gone, finally giving Iroh the chance to be the Fire Lord that he never got after his birthright was taken from him. Decades later, Zuko handed the crown to his daughter Izumi and stepped back from the ruling the Fire Nation, spending his final chapter traveling the world on the back of his own dragon, actually one that was hatched from the same golden egg that we see in the original series in the Old Masters episode, and he was helping to defend the next Avatar Korra when a dangerous group came for her, the Red Lotus. Now, the canon actually never shows his death like many of the other ones, and the popular theory runs that he simply kept going since the powerful firebending masters in this world tend towards remarkably long lives. I mean, look at Zhong. Because of this, a significant part of the fandom is convinced that he was the last to die in the whole Team Avatar. He outlived the entire group. Now, the one puzzle that fans still chew on to this day is the identity of Izumi's mother. Because she was never named on screen, most have settled on the woman he loved as a teenager, and a stubborn minority insisting that it was someone the audience already knew. Obviously, most insisted on Mei, but some have put Suki in there as a contender, as I mentioned earlier. Now, because we see Zuko appear in The Legend of Korra, we know he lives far longer than Sokka and, of course, Aang. So his story on how he died is still yet to be told, but he served a crucial role in the world, building Republic City with Aang, protecting Korra from the Red Lotus, and of course, later helping Korra in the Legend of Korra series. And that leads us to number 4, Appa. Appa is the Sky Bison who was the best friend and companion of Aang for so many years. Now surprisingly, Sky Bison are built to live far longer than people, and Appa spent a full century frozen inside the same iceberg that kept Aang alive, sharing the suspended state that slowed everything down for the both of them. After the war, he carried his family through the long work of reviving the air nomad culture, watching herds of his own kind, long thought extinct, quietly return to the temples. Believe it or not, air bison actually can have families in the Avatar universe, so Appa did actually care about the surviving air bison that we see later in The Legend of Korra. Also, as we know, the bond between a bison and his airbender runs for an entire lifetime, and even reaches into the spirit world, which is why the strongest theory about his death is also the most fitting, that Appa faded at the very same moment that Aang passed away, the same century in the ice catching up with them both at once. Fans who hold on to it picture the two of them passing together and reuniting on the other side in the spirit world, the way an old Avatar and his dragon are said to remain at each other's side beyond death, just like Roku and his dragon. And that leads us onto the other animal companion of Team Avatar, number 5. Momo is the one member that nobody really likes to think about because his clock always ran the fastest. Winged lemurs live nowhere near as long as airbenders or bisons, so even in the kindest version of events, he would have reached the end of his natural life while the rest of the group was still young and rebuilding the world. The common theory, and sadly the saddest one, is that the cheerful little lemur was the very first of Team Avatar to go, slipping away of old age while everyone who loved him was still in their prime. There is also a softer version of this that fans like to cling to, that he lived long enough to see his own kind rediscovered and saved from extinction, so before his death, Momo got to see other lemurs return to the air temples. And that leads us on to number 6. Sokka. Sokka is the story that hands us a death and then flatly withholds the cause for so many years. He came out of the war as the strategist who held the whole group together, and he built a serious life afterwards, representing his people on the founding council of the brand new republic and eventually rising to become chief of the Southern Water Tribe. One of the last confirmed things that he ever did was to help fight off the Red Lotus, the band of radicals who tried to steal the new Avatar Korra as a child, a battle that ended with the whole group captured and locked away for 13 years. The most popular and haunting theory for how Sokka went out is that he was killed in that very fight against the Red Lotus, dying to protect a 5-year-old Korra and carrying the secret of his death into the gap between the two stories. The theory goes that Zahir captured Sokka and executed him on the spot. Either that or one of the other bending members of the group did something to him that left him unable to survive, and sadly unable to be healed by his sister Katara. This would explain the silence of Sokka's fate perfectly in the canon, since the franchise has a habit of honoring its quietest sacrifices with a statue and not much else. In his memorial, raising that famous boomerang outside of the tribe's cultural center reads very differently once you see it that way. The most important non-bender in the saga gets a monument and a mystery, and that brings us to the only death in the story that is ever explained in full, and that is number 7. Aang is the single member whose death in the saga actually is fully explained, although even here the fans had to do most of the work. The years after the war made him one of the busiest people alive, since he rebuilt the air nomad culture from almost nothing, helped found the Great Republic and its capital city, and raised 3 children who would each carry a piece of his legacy forward. The cause traces back to the iceberg, because the 100 years he spent frozen in the Avatar state quietly drained his life force from him the entire time, leaving his body to carry that hidden cost into adulthood. And this is why he died of natural causes at only the biological age of 66, although theoretically he actually was 166. The catch is that we're not really told much about this by the story at all out loud, so for years the explanation was something that the community reconstructed from a few stray lines and later word from the creators, and a more cynical theory still floats around that the real reason is far plainer, that Aang was written to die young purely so that the next Avatar could exist. But of course that isn't any fun, so we have to go into the canonical explanations. What's been pretty much agreed upon by the creators and the fandom is that there is a cruel symmetry to his death, that the same iceberg which saved him as a boy is the thing that shortened his life as a man, that the stress of being in the Avatar state for an entire 100 years and being in ice for that long just absolutely put an insane toll on Aang's body and made it so that he just couldn't live to the normal human lifespan of about 100 years old in the Avatar universe. Unfortunately, that meant that he would die before he would ever get to meet his grandchildren, and every one of whom which would grow into a very powerful bender, an airbender. But that small detail about the grandchildren matters far more than it looks, and because that leads us directly into number 8. Number 8 is Katara. And this brings us to the strangest ending of them all, because Katara never dies on screen at all, and yet the fandom is more certain about how she goes out than anyone else, because her theory is the most interesting and actually goes all the way back to season 1 of the original Avatar the Last Airbender. After the war, Katara became the most celebrated healer of her generation, rebuilt her broken tribe in the south, raised her 3 children, and grew into the wise elder that the whole next generation would turn to for guidance. The certainty though about her death comes from a single early scene, when a fortune teller, Aunt Wu, read her future and told her 2 things. First, that she would marry a powerful bender, obviously that was checked off by marrying Aang, and that she would die peacefully in her sleep after the birth of her 3rd great-grandchild. And by the time we see Katara in The Legend of Korra, Katara is still going strong, her grandchildren are barely teenagers, and not a single great-grandchild has been born. So the whole theory rests on a clock that has not even finished ticking, or has not even started ticking yet, and the most detailed death in all of Team Avatar belongs to the one member who is still alive. So if the fortune teller theory is correct, and the creators end up going with that, Katara still has another at least 20 to 30 years left in her, making her one of the oldest characters and definitely the last to die, if not Zuko, because she still has 3 great-grandchildren to go. So this is the one to be watching out for, and as soon as they confirm it in a comic or in a book, or maybe even in the 7 Havens, stay tuned to the channel and I'm going to cover every new update to the Team Avatar death situation and what happened to them in between the series and later content. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed every single death of Team Avatar and how they died. If you enjoyed this Avatar lore and want to see plenty more lore content like this in the Avatar universe, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. And if you made it this far, drop a thank Mr. Zuko in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one.